Ferdinand Reese. I was wondering if you have ever thought about talking about militant veganism online, or if you have heard of the documentary What the Health on Netflix. I ask because at one point I was converted, quote unquote, to veganism because vegan doctors such as Michael Greger, John McDougall, and T. Colin Campbell were preaching online the dangers of meat consumption and made many promises of weight loss and improved health by cutting out all animal products. I posted my story on Abby Sharp's video on What the Health, but just to give an overview, I adopted a healthy vegan diet, and within 2 months, my digestive health deteriorated. I lost muscle mass, and I nearly passed out at the grocery store. My doctor told me that everyone is different and that while some people do well without animal protein, others cannot. I eventually regained my health after introducing meat back into my diet, but the recovery was very slow. I started watching your videos, which have helped me think critically about diet and health in general. I hadn't posted much in public about my brush with veganism until What the Health came out, and it angered me that the filmmakers were using graphic and grotesque imagery to illustrate their claims about the supposed dangers of meat consumption. Moreover, they claim that doctors profit from the ill health of a public that consumes meat. I suppose my question to you is, would the actions of the filmmakers and plant-based doctors amount to coercive persuasion and thought reform, in your opinion? Furthermore, what advice would you give to anyone who is thinking of radically changing their diet? All right, Ferdinand, thank you very much for this question, and it is a good one. I am not a vegan. I'm not into veganism. I don't think that that's particularly a very well thought out or certainly not organically evolved diet. We are clearly omnivores, and meat is a very important part of the human diet as far as I'm concerned. Whether you can or don't have to have meat is a choice you can make, and you're perfectly free to do so. But let's not go off the deep end and start talking about how bodies don't need meat. We've been eating meat forever, and our bodies very much crave meat. And I, for example, am a complete meatosaurus, and I couldn't imagine living the rest of my life without having any more meat. That's just ridiculous to me. Now, that all being said, I'm not any more in favor of animal cruelty than anybody else should be. I don't think that because I like meat and eat meat that, animals should be tortured in order to give it to me. Slaughtering animals is a necessary part of life, and it's just part of the circle of our ecology. And so I'm not in some kind of guilt space about that. The food chain and the whole circle of life and all that, that's just reality. And I don't deny that reality exists. And I know that there are some people who do, and they get quite pissed about it because they are responding mostly, from what I've seen, they are mostly not talking so much about diet and meat versus plants. They're talking about animal cruelty, and they don't like and the imagery that's used from PETA and from vegans to talk about animal cruelty is quite graphic and quite gross, and it's not fun to look at. And I agree, we should reform how we're doing that. But the idea that the solution to animal cruelty is to cut out all meat, that's just impractical at best and kind of stupid, really, because it's never going to happen. It's just never, ever going to happen that we're going to cut meat out of our diet completely. Our bodies aren't built for it. And as your doctor said, everybody's kind of different. So some people might have certain tolerances or an ability to not have to get their protein from meat sources, but other people, they need that. And that's just how that's going to go. And I know there's, some people right now listening is probably gnashing their teeth and thinking, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But, I'm just talking about a very common sense approach to this. I don't have to get into, veganism now in order to, I don't have to subscribe to that in order to talk intelligently about this in one fashion or another. So anyway, as far as thought reform, I think what you're seeing there is propaganda. And propaganda, there's a scale of influence or a spectrum of influence that I have mentioned before. And you have like education, and then you have propaganda, and then you have thought reform. And thought reform, or, brainwashing, as some people refer to it, is pretty hardcore. And you're not going to get brainwashed watching a video. You're not going to get, thought reform involves a lot more effort than just showing people images or pictures or throwing words at them. There's a bit more to it than that. You have to, for example, get the person to engage with you. It's a two-way street when you're at that level of changing hearts and minds. But the beginning of that, the way to get there, is propaganda. And that is what I see. What the Health and other, vegan propaganda is what it is. It's an effort to give information in a very controlled way so that only certain parts of the information, if you have a whole pie, we're only going to slice this bit and give it to you and tell you that's the whole pie. That's propaganda. It's deceptive by nature. It is almost always agenda-driven, and not even almost always. It always is agenda-driven because there is some ulterior motive behind it. That's why the curves. That's why the deception. If you gave the full picture, then people might have options and choices and ways to think about this that are different than the way you want them to. So propaganda is very focused information transmission in order to get a person to think a particular way about this thing or this subject, okay? And that's what I see going on there. As far as advice I would give, I'd say, about anybody radically changing their diet, I have always said and will always say, get to see your doctor, get a medical exam, get a searching physical, find out what supplements you might be low on or might need through blood work and chemical, analysis of your body and stuff. You got to know before you go, when you're going to make some radical shift to how you're feeding your body energy. And this is really, really important because it not just affects your gut line or your waistline, it affects your mental health too. Mental health is physical health. It's all the same thing. There isn't some other thing going on with your mental health. It's all part of your body and its processes. So, if you're not giving your body enough energy that it can convert over and use easily, then you're actually going to start thinking worse. That's where I'm kind of trying to go with that, is you have to have your brain is using 30% of the energy your body's producing just to run itself as a usual sort of thing. If you want to engage in any real deep thinking or really get your brain going, you got to have energy in your body to feed that machine. It's a hungry machine. So this is why I really, really recommend that if, before you go making some big change in your diet, you know what you're doing and you know the particulars of your body. And your own allergies, for example, right? You'd have to have, are there any sort of viruses or situations with your body that maybe need to be looked into, that kind of stuff. Anyway, I think you guys get the idea. And with that, you'll have a much more sure avenue of what your diet should be and how you should tailor it for yourself and your lifestyle. So that's my best dietary advice on that, and it's worth exactly how much you paid for it. But that you asked, and so that's my opinion on that. There you go.